Okay, so I'm here with a group of students to discuss the health and safety aspects of outdoor activity. We're covering criteria P2, M1 and part D1. So just for the camera guys, can you just state your name?
Matt Kinnersley.
Stuart Davis, Liam Turner.
Okay. Alright then, so chaps, if we can just start with your first activity. What's your first activity? Do you want to climbing first?
Yeah, we do climbing.
Yeah, climbing.
Alright, so give me a safety consideration for climbing, Liam.
That's the EAP. Safe up. So the safety consideration for climbing would be obviously like hitting your head against the wall.
Okay, and how can we reduce that?
Well, first provide helmets, and also make sure no one's swinging off the walls or anything like that.
Okay.
And obviously,
Do you want to evaluate that approach?
yeah, obviously the helmets will reduce the head injury massively. So if you don't have a helmet and you crash against the wall, you know, do serious damage to yourself.
Yeah.
Also, if the helmet's not on properly, then that could be another issue. If it's not secured properly, then it could be could hit your head against the wall.
Not as effective, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you for that. Give me another safety consideration for climbing, Stuart.
Rope burns.
Yeah.
The way you can reduce it, wearing gloves.
Yeah.
And just warning participants before you do the event.
Yeah.
It protects your hands and will stop any injuries. But could restrict movement. That's a con for it. Could restrict movement. Could find it uncomfortable, but that's what you got to do if you want to reduce the injury.
Okay, Matty.
So the harness being too loose, so you can fall out the harness if you have.
Yeah.
So if your harness isn't done up properly, there's obviously potential that you can fall out your harness while you're climbing up the wall.
Yeah.
Especially like when being lowered down.
Yeah.
So when you come into that down the wall, you could lean too far back, you can come out the harness. So the way of reducing that is always making sure that the harnesses are done up to the correct tightness. Obviously, a con of that is obviously it can be uncomfortable, like in certain areas. And a pro of that obviously it's there, it's to save your life basically, from so you're not falling down and hurting yourself seriously.
Yeah. All right. Have you got any more safety measures that you want to highlight? Or any areas where you could hurt yourself? Done 3 so far. So you've covered banging your head on a wall. You've covered. Yeah. Falling out the harness. Yeah. Yeah. Do you have any more?
Lead bolts trapping your fingers.
All right.
As you're going up. We put wearing gloves and staying away from them, letting people know that it can be a danger.
Yeah.
They'll protect your hands if you wear gloves, and obviously more awareness if you get told before you do the climb.
Activity, yeah.
Especially if you know where the bolts are as well.
Yeah, but the only con is you can get your hand caught in them with the glove, but that's just another thing you've got to be aware of.
All right. So, explain what are the main safety pieces of kit on climbing?
And harness.
What's the harness look like?
It goes around you.
Yeah.
Around your waist. Well, through your legs, around your waist.
Yeah.
Then you have the carabiner on the.
What's the carabiner?
A little clip, which the rope, the end of the rope goes into.
Okay. What's that made of then?
What?
What's it made of? The carabiner.
Aluminium, is it?
It's like like a light alloy?
Yeah, it's like aluminium, and it's got a twisty clip on it to make sure you can tie it.
Strong enough to obviously hold your weight.
Okay, good stuff. All right, so just moving on to your emergency action plan for that. If let's say I'm climbing, is this climbing and have you got climbing and higher ropes or just climbing?
Yeah, climbing out higher rope.
All right. All right. Have you got any do you have any additional safety issues with regards to high ropes that you haven't already
we're not
highlighted?
swinging into poles.
Yeah.
So you got like the tall poles, and if you like slip, you could swing and hit one of the pole. So
Yeah.
So other things around you, and we got the reduced risk is stay parallel to the position that you're in.
Yeah.
So you're not
to
like
the B
moving
layer
around.
as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're not moving around. And
All right. Any good and bad aspects of that approach?
Well, if you do that, it makes it easy for the B layer
Yeah.
as well, because they're not having to try and shift your weight around as well.
Yeah. Any cons, Liam?
The cons of like staying parallel.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any.
Would that be a good approach to take even in like windy weather if it was really windy?
I suppose if it's
Really-
windy, you might not be able
No,
to
probably wouldn't want to do it.
If it's windy,
Yeah.
you probably have to cool out.
And with regards to high ropes, are there any other issues there that you haven't already highlighted? Because you've done 5 so far.
Well, again, we got about the harness.
Falling from
Falling,
heights and
so-
stuff.
Yeah.
It's the same as the climbing, but just obviously make sure your harness is done. And
So what's the main safety with regards to climbing? What's the main safety issue? What's the main safety aspect that you can control?
Having a B layer, obviously, they're there to keep the tension on the ropes and
Yeah.
stuff, and to stop you from falling. They're there to catch you. Obviously, they keep the tension off. So if you fall, you're not going to fall a
all
distance.
the way down, you're going to fall
You're,
off.
you're going to
off
fall
the
off the
Yeah.
off the obstacle that you're on.
So what would happen if they weren't doing their job very well?
Then
You can hurt
you
yourself
could be
and all
you
sorts.
can end up seriously injured. And
Is
obviously-
there nothing in place safety
You
wise?
can have another person.
they
pulling the
yeah
rope
they have
as well.
another person on the rope.
So
And
put an extra rope.
also
Once they pull
sometimes they
them
put a knot in the rope
Yeah.
in the tail line. So obviously you can only fall to
So
there,
far.
cause then that knot will stop the rope from.
So it's like you've got like a fail-safe
Yeah,
system in
basically,
place.
yeah.
Like a barrier to
Yeah.
stop you falling anymore.
All right. Okay. Good. Yeah. Thank you for
So
that.
every so often the instructor would change the knot position so it's further up
Right.
at the tail line.
Okay. Good stuff. Right. So let's say I'm high ropes and climbing. Either your emergency action plan's going to be similar, isn't it? Let's say I have a bit of a panic attack and I get stuck. I swing a little bit and I bang my head and I'm unconscious. Yeah, but I'm hanging. I'm halfway at the wall. Yeah, being held by the belay. What would your procedures? What procedures would you use to get me to a place where I'm safe and healthy?
Probably have to get like an instructor to go and support you while you're up there.
Yeah. Use your emergency plan that you've produced.
Yes, obviously you'd be getting the person off the wall safely.
Yeah.
So that's either getting someone else to go up there and
To
try and
support
bring
you
him
down.
Yeah.
while the other guy brings him down.
Yeah.
Obviously trying to keep as still as possible in case you've got any spinal injury or something like that.
Yeah.
Then obviously once we get down to the floor, that's when we, first aidable, come and sort of do checks like first and secondary checks.
Right.
Obviously if you're unconscious and you can't really ask any questions, so obviously you'd be like you checking your breathing and stuff like that, and then obviously you call an ambulance, or maybe if we can get.
Right. So we've got you down the bottom.
Yeah.
Yeah. We've gone through the first aid checks. So the rest of the group, what are they doing? Are they just stood around watching, seeing what's going on, or
Someone else would come and sort
Take
of
them away up to
supervise
do
them.
something
Right.
else.
someone else takes that group away, supervises that group whilst all this is going on?
Yeah.
Who's calling the ambulance?
Either like a receptionist.
Receptionist calls the ambulance.
Or one of the instructors that are there
Right.
at
Yeah,
the time.
Yeah.
Someone will have to go and meet them when they come.
Yeah.
All right. Somebody comes, meets the ambulance, brings it to where briefs the ambulance crew,
to let them know what's happened and,
Yeah. Then what?
They're conscious of
and what action they've already took.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then what happens?
Obviously, one of the crew, say the ambulance will come in, and person, say one of the people on the wall who was doing the belaying or whatever,
Yeah.
would go with you, obviously, to tell the, just to, you know, make sure you're all right, and then also they might want to know a bit more information, like how it happened and stuff like that. Obviously, there's someone with like the first-hand experience of who actually saw it happen. Also, you'd have to fill out like incident reports and stuff like that, like riddle and stuff like that.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that. All right. So we've covered 2 activities there in terms of equipment and emergency action plan and safety measures. As we move on to your 3rd activity, which is
We've got rafting.
rafting. All right. So Stuart, you can give me a safety issue with regards to rafting.
Yeah, you could fall off the boat and well, potentially hit your head on the boat or drown, anything like that really.
All right. What measures are in place to relieve that?
Wetsuit, obviously not just for when you fall out, but obviously to keep you warm as well whilst you're in the colder conditions.
Yeah.
And a buoyancy aid, so if you do fall in, you've got something to obviously help you. The pros, obviously, with the buoyancy aid is it helps you float, so it reduces your panicking as well. Your cons, it's probably quite uncomfortable, but you have to have it really, and it restricts movement, but you have to have it to save your life, basically.
All right, thank you. Liam, give me another one, please.
Another one could be getting hit by a paddle.
Yeah.
So obviously the safety measures in that is using a helmet, which protects your head.
Yeah.
Also, kind of it could be if it's not on properly, then you can still do damage because of if it's being loose.
Yeah.
You can get a bit more impact from it being loose. But if it's there to save your life, also you might catch it on something as well.
Sure.
As well.
Okay, so any pros, is that your pros and cons?
Yeah.
Good, yeah.
You protect your head.
Right. And what's the con for that?
So it could be the straps getting caught on something, or again if it's loose, then it might not work as effectively.
What else? How could you prevent? You know, what could you do as an instructor to try and prevent that injury happening, getting whacked in the face with a paddle?
Well, just sort of briefing on everyone on like paddle safety, you know, not having it too high, not swinging it around and stuff like that.
Is there a pro and a con to that? Or a con, you know, the pro's obvious, isn't it?
Well, the pro is that everyone would be safe if you brief them. Obviously, a con, you know, some people might not listen as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. You've always got
especially if it's
risk,
teenagers and stuff like that.
Yeah. Right, Matt, if you could give me one more, please.
So for the helmet again, it could cause strangulation if it's not not done it properly. It could fall off and end up around your neck and then strangle you that way if you've fallen off the boat as well.
Yeah.
And obviously if it's done up too tightly as well, it could obviously do the same thing again.
Right.
So obviously a way to reduce the risk is obviously make sure it's done up properly, so it's not too tight and not too loose.
Yeah.
And obviously make sure it's to correct fitting, because obviously it's got different sizes, because it's got a twisty knob on the back of it to make it like loose or a tight one to fit your head properly.
Who'd check that?
Possibly get the instructor or someone else in the boat with you to check it for you before you go out onto the water.
Right.
And obviously a pro to that is obviously it's going to protect your head. It's going to stop you from like hitting your head on the bottom and stuff as well. If there's that possibility that you're going to go under the water, you could hit your head on the rock and stuff.
Yeah.
Obviously the con to it is obviously you could, if it's not done properly, you could end up getting strangled or obviously seriously getting injured.
Yeah. Okay, good stuff. What's the life? What do you call them? Life? Did you call it life preserve?
Buoyancy aid.
Buoyancy aid. What does that actually look like? What's it made of?
So it's got no arms, so it's just covering your chest, sort of down to your bottom of your ribs, sort of area. It's quite inflatable, so it's not really thin because
they come differently, don't they? Yeah. Some inflate, and then I think some of them got special stuff inside them which help
it one size fit all?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, I think it is. Yeah.
Do you do you tighten it up with anything, or you just put it
Yeah, I
on?
think there's straps.
There's a zip of the middle and clip straps
Yeah.
as well, two straps as
Alright.
well. Just to make sure, obviously, if that zip fails,
Yeah.
then you still clipped in as well.
Okay. Good stuff. All right. All right. So I think you've covered equipment there. You've talked about helmets. You've talked about the paddle. You've talked about the buoyancy aid and the pros and cons and how they fit into health and safety aspects of it.
Yeah.
What if I was out on a raft and let's say I fell in the water and I got hypothermia? Right. What emergency action plan have you got in place to deal with that scenario?
So obviously, if you fell in, then obviously either someone else would go in after you, or you'd
Yeah.
have a lifeboat come and rescue you, or like, you know, they might have a little small boat just to come round and collect you.
Well, what have you got written on there?
So obviously, if you got a drowning or in the water,
All right.
so obviously rescue the casualty.
Yeah.
So that can either be someone going in after them and
Yeah.
then taking them out and putting them on the boat,
Mhm.
or obviously another lifeboat coming by the side and bringing them out that way.
Yeah.
Obviously, if you've got hypothermia, then they would have foil blankets on board
Yeah.
to wrap you in the foil blanket to keep your heating. Obviously, the rest of the group will get taken to shore, again supervised by someone else,
Mm.
while the other guy, while the casualty would get also taken to shore,
Yeah.
possibly taken inside, maybe take the wet clothes off and put another foil blanket around them, or a dry, warm blanket
Yeah.
around them. Obviously, if an ambulance needs to be called, then an ambulance needs to be called. If you go unconscious or something.
So when you get that person to shore, what happens to all the other students or the other people in that boat?
I imagine they'd be took away to do something
Right,
more
so
practical,
take them back.
or
so someone else supervises
yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then someone stays with the casualty.
I should imagine if any emergency services need to be called, I should imagine it would be maybe another instructor, because if you're off site,
Yeah.
then you won't be able to contact a receptionist.
Sure.
So it'd have to be sort of whoever can contact, and then you probably have to work it out between you if there's 2 or 3 of you,
Yeah.
who'd go and brief the emergency services when they come to provide any first aid or anything like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Brilliant. Right. Thank you for that. All right. So if we move on to our final activity, so we're looking at tunnels. All right. So Matt, if you can give me a safety issue with
So
regards to
banging your
tunnels.
head while you're in the tunnels, because obviously they're quite small and compact.
Yeah.
So and obviously the measure to reduce that is going to be the helmet.
Yeah.
So you're wearing a helmet at all times while you're in the tunnels. So the pros of that is going to avoid you banging your head and obviously knock yourself unconscious. The con of it is obviously it's going to be quite uncomfortable. Obviously there's ways of making it so it's not so uncomfortable for you.
Yeah.
Obviously making sure it's fastened properly and obviously it's all properly fitted.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So, Stuart, another one, please.
Yeah, we've got getting stuck or lost in the tunnels if you lose your team, or if you find yourself in a place where you feel you can't get out, or panic or anything. The measures to reduce the risk, we've got teammates, obviously moral support, so helping verbally, and we've got instructors as well, so if you do get stuck, I think they can sort of come and find you as well if it is that bad.
Yeah.
The pros we got, obviously, with your teammates being verbally supportive, it can help you calm down, sort of help you get back to where you need to be to get out of the situation. And for the cons is if the person is really unsettled, then they might not listen and they might panic more by having people sort of talking to them, they might panic a bit more.
Yeah. Yeah, good. Okay. Liam, one more please.
Oh yeah, getting kicked or struck by other people.
Yeah.
So obviously it's dark in there. You know, you're not going to see where your arms or legs are going. So obviously a measurement to reduce that would be obviously before everyone goes in, they get briefed on, you know, what to do and stuff like that. Preferably like, you know, keep a few maybe about a metre apart from each other, just in case anything like that happens. Obviously, pro to that is no one will get injured, no one can get, you know, accidentally kicked and knocked unconscious. But yet again, you know, that's something you might not be able to help sometimes because, you know, if you can't see, then, you know, it's going to be difficult. But another thing is just to keep talking to each other, just so you know your distance from each other, in case you do sort of, you know, collide with each other or accidentally kick each other or anything like that. And obviously it can't, again, just be, you know, you might not be able to see, well, obviously you can't see each other, but you might not be able to hear each other if someone's, you know, not talking or,
Sure.
you know.
Yeah. Okay. So moving on to your emergency action plan. All right, I'm in the tunnels and I get stuck in that web thing. Yeah. How are you going to get me out? Or what's your emergency action plan
So obviously,
to get me out?
Yeah, in the tunnels we've got obviously get to the casualty.
Yeah.
So if they're stuck anywhere or panicking, if we get to them directly,
Yeah.
then we can see exactly what's happening and how they are.
Sure.
The first thing really would be calm them down if they're in a bit of a panicky state.
Yeah.
If not, see if we can get them out, or rather than from in the tunnel to like a chamber, so there's a bit of a bigger space, so we can sit down and talk to them. And then, if we need to, we can administer first aid.
Yeah.
Obviously, again, if we need emergency services again, we can call them. Because I should imagine there'd be more than one supervisor on, so we can contact them, say ring or go to reception and ring.
Yeah.
And then we could fill out any incident forms if we need to.
Okay. Well, that whole approach you just talked about there. What are the strengths and what do you think a weakness might be of your approach that you've designed in terms of the emergency action plan?
I think the strength would be getting to the casualty quickly. That way they're not going to get any worse.
Yeah.
If you leave them longer, they might panic more.
Yeah.
So if you get to them quickly, then they might calm down a bit. But
Liam, weakness?
So the only weakness is you might not know where the casualty is. So in that case, you take like,
yeah, especially if
they're unconscious
or anything, and they can't contact you, then
So obviously as well, the instructor's not always going to know where they are, because obviously some of your teams then got to go out, find an instructor and say, one of our team's stuck in so-and-so, but obviously you don't know exactly what tunnel it is. So obviously the task that we got set when we was there was to build a map of the tunnels.
Yeah.
So obviously in building that map, they've got to try and then help the instructor to find out where he is, but obviously the instructors do know their ways around the tunnels, so they would find them quicker. But
Sure. Okay, very good. All right, move on. Just any other safety kit that you need in the tunnels? You talked about helmets.
we did helmets, and we said it's not really safety kit, but we advised long sleeve clothing. So obviously to avoid getting wet, and if you're banging your arms on the wood or friction burns going through the tunnels or anything like that, it's just advised really, because it stops getting friction burns. So.
Brilliant. Okay, so moving on to your, just going on to the other action plans. What would you say of, your climbing action plan? Yeah, of getting, of dealing with casualties or issues. What would you say a strength and a weakness of that would be, Matt?
so getting to the casualty on the climbing?
Yeah. Well, your whole procedures for dealing with an issue. What's the strength of that approach?
So obviously the strength of like getting to the casualty and making sure he's safe is obviously if an instructor goes up, he's going to be better off. So obviously they're more experienced, and obviously they'll be able to get to the casualty quicker. Yeah. And so they'll be able to help them down safely. With the instructors, obviously, I think it's probably best for the instructor to belay them down, and another instructor to belay down as well. Obviously that way, because they're going to be more safe and secure when they're leading the ropes through the hands and stuff.
And a weakness of that approach?
So a weakness of it, obviously, is obviously them being stuck on the wall is going to be harder to try and get them down safely if they're unconscious. Obviously, because their bodies, with having like if this is a larger person as well, that an instructor that goes up might not be able to like help them down as easy as it would be. Obviously, they're bigger and heavier, and obviously they got to try and support their head and stuff as well.
So if you've got two instructors dealing with that incident, who's looking after the participants? What are the participants doing at that point?
Well,
do you think that is that an issue at all?
Potentially, because like obviously those people are watching you, you could make a mistake or something with bringing the person down. But obviously, you would get them to somewhere else where there's like there's sort of less pressure on the people rescuing them.
Yeah, Stuart, if you were someone that was ill, or not in a good place, would you want an audience?
No, I think the easiest thing to do would probably be if two people are needed to see to the incident, probably the easiest way would either be to just say to the group, go and do whatever, rather than leaving the incident and then coming back. So if they were to just direct them and say, can you lead the group in doing something, even if it's not that practical, even if it's just getting them away from the incident, just to make it easier on the instructors.
Okay. All right. And I think that's three, isn't it? Rafting. What would you say would be the strength of your rafting action plan?
Strength would be like
it's immediate. It's immediate attention to what's happened.
Yeah.
Also,
but I think the con would be obviously if it's happening on a boat and you need to get that person back on the boat, all the other people are still going to be on the boat. Yeah. So you can't really, especially if you're on the water, you can't just push them off the side.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
you've got to be able to get to land, haven't you, I suppose. Or according to your plan anyway. Anything else you want to add to that, guys?
Also for rafting, if the water's like quite fast, the person might go down a stream or something, which can make it harder for people to rescue them.
That'd be a weakness of it, wouldn't it? Yeah, absolutely. All right, well thank you for that. We've had a good discussion about the 4 areas, emergency action plan, and we've also considered the equipment, the safety equipment that you need in those activities, and all the safety measures for each activity as well. All right, what I'll do from this point, guys, is I've made some notes and I'll give you some feedback. It'll be within the next week with regards to your grades. Any questions from my perspective? Happy with that?